It's Gamescience dice. Let's talk about them. Something I've always admired about Gamescience dice is their aesthetics. They are hard-edged, and the plastic isn't really finished in that kind of shiny way that most dice are. They have something of a dull quality about them, and they just feel kind of brutal, which I kind of really like. Also claims made by Gamescience and by many of their followers that these are the fairest dice you can get, and there's lots of discussion about the logic behind that claim. And basically, these are made in the same way that many other dice are made, by injecting plastic into a mould. But with most dice, they are then cut off from the tree and then tumbled in order to take off any harsh edges where the dice kind of meets the injection point. And then they're painted and then they're tumbled again. So tumbling gives you those soft, rounded edges, and it also gives you that shine. But it does have its drawbacks, namely that there's no way to control exactly how much of an edge you take off each side of your dice. And that means that inevitably they are not going to roll fairly, because you may take off more material from one side than the other, leaving you with an egg-shaped dice that is likely to roll more on one side than the other. Gamescience's solution to this problem is an elegantly simple one, but it isn't without its own issues. What they do is they just don't tumble their dice. They remove that from the process entirely, and what this does is it leaves you with a hard-edged dice with nice sharp corners. It gives it that great aesthetic, but also means that these are as molded. They haven't gone through a process which has deformed them in any way, which is great. However, it also leaves tiny what are called sprues on there, and this is kind of a blemish, which is the point where the plastic from the mold, plastic is injected into the mold, which is then kind of clipped off afterward. Now, this could be carefully taken off with a knife or filed down, but of course, once you do that, you are then creating a potential for taking off too much material and creating an unfair dice. However, the thing that I noticed is that some of these sprues are quite big. They are going to affect your rolls, and then even outside, apart from the sprues, these hard edges, a number of them, like this D4 here, has a humongous burr on one of the edges, and I think that's an issue, because it makes the dice, aesthetically, it makes them appear unfinished, but also in rolling, those burrs and those sprues are going to affect the outcome as much as the rounded edges of a tumbled dice. I've seen no evidence that the burrs and sprues left from this process are less of a detriment than tumbling. It's basically exchanging one drawback for another. I don't think they're any less fair than other dice, but I'm also not convinced that they are more fair. I've been looking up what other people have said about it, including what the manufacturers say about it, and mostly what they're talking about is this process of tumbling and what that does. But I've never really seen properly addressed what these burrs and sprues have as an effect. Like, they acknowledge that they're there, but I don't think they ever really address the question of, well, what does that do to accuracy? Because at the moment, I am not convinced that the upside of not tumbling is enough to counteract the downside of having these kind of uneven edges. So I've yet to be convinced. However, I don't believe they're any less fair than another set, and they do look so damn cool. So that's nice. The issue I have is that they are so darned expensive. And I get that you're kind of paying for this particular method of manufacture, and Gamescience seem to have the monopoly on that at the moment. However, let's not forget that this method of manufacture is actually less processes. So why is it so much more expensive? They cost around $15 for a set, although if you live outside of the US, you're paying even more again for postage. I paid over 30 quid for these, and I'm disappointed that I did, if I'm honest. I don't feel that the additional cost is justified, considering that another set that you buy has actually gone through more processes, and so kind of exactly why are they so expensive? Ultimately, the price is justifiable if you believe that they are fairer, and for me, I just feel like jury's still out on that. Especially the cost is an issue to me because they feel so unfinished. As I say, it's not just sprues, it's also strange little burrs and imperfections to the edges that you can feel, and hopefully I'll be able to pick some up with the camera to show you. That just make the thing feel so rough and unfinished. And what, you know, I've got to go in with either a sharp blade or some kind of file to be able to finish these, to make them as accurate as they claim to be. So for a dice that I have to finish myself, I kind of wonder why we're paying so much money for them. So in conclusion, I like them because they look really great. I'm not convinced about the cost, and I'm not convinced that they are as fair as they claim. I'm happy to be proved wrong. In a way, I want to be proved wrong because I think it's so cool that people are thinking around these problems and thinking around ways to make dice better for us. I love Gamescience in that they are trying to do something different and unique and address an issue. I'm not convinced that they actually have made dice better, but I love that we've got some other options out there. So that's my kind of mixed opinion about these dice, and I'm glad that I got to make a video about it. I'm a little bit disappointed that I spent as much money as I did. Thanks for watching Mind Milk D20. Did you know that scientists tell us that people who like stuff are more interesting than people that don't? So why not like this video? There's some more videos over here that YouTube thinks you might quite like, and I'd like you to watch them as well. And finally, why not subscribe? Thanks again for watching. Bye.